What's going on, everybody? It's PapaStones coming back with another video. So today we're going to be going over the top 10 cards so far revealed from set 3. These are all just personal opinions, but feel free to let me know if you think I missed one or if you think my list is pretty spot on. But first things first, this is my honorable mention. This is the 11th card. It is Tranquility. I think this card's really good. However, if Republic does nothing, this card does nothing, right? But if there is a decent, like, swarmy style Republic deck, or not even, if there's just a Republic deck in general, I think this card sees play in it 100% of the time because it's really solid. But that's up to debate depending if there's a deck for it. So we're going to get into the top 10. These are no particular order, by the way. First off, we got General Grievous. I know it's starting off weird. It literally has nothing to do with the on attack. It is just the fact that it is a 3-cost 4/4. It's not crazy, right? Maybe, like, I I like to think people will try and do the funny thing, right? But even in just like regular blue decks, if you're playing like what's the term? I soft control. I was missing it for some reason. If you're playing soft control, more unit focus, this will go in for sure. It's a 3-cost 4/4, right? Like, it's a crazy good stat line. It's worth playing in that sense. Moving on though, I've got Malevolence. This one's kind of more of a, I feel like a hot take. I'm not positive, but the only reason I don't hate this, it's a 9-cost 7/7, but it has exploit 4. So, like, sure, you'd think like immediately, oh, it's got to go into an exploit deck, so I could play this for 1. But even if you exploit one thing and just make it a 7-cost 7/7 with restore 2, and you get to give something -4 when it's played, I think that's good enough. Restore is not very common in villainy, and on top of the fact, restore in space is generally hard to deal with. Like, I know set 1, if you played an Inferno 4 and then slapped a Devotion on it, like, half the time it would survive forever, you know what I mean? So, like, being able to throw a restore on a bigger body could be terrifying. And then you take into consideration that you can also, if you're playing an exploit deck, you could get, the fantasy of playing this for 1, sacking 4 battle droids or 4 when defeated things to play this for 1 and have a 7/7 in space with restore 2. Moving on though, we've got Obi-Wan's Aether Spite. This card I think is really solid. It is just because it's a 5-cost 4/6 spaceship, right? But when you play it and attack or whatever, you can, damage it to deal 2, right? And so, like, first, like, this answers all small spaceships that are common right now, like Kylo's TIE. I'd say Lurking TIE, but that doesn't count. Kylo's TIE, mercenary gunship, pops a shield on the 7th Fleet. Doesn't answer Red 3, I guess, but the biggest thing that I thought, if it still stays relevant, is that this can answer Fire Spray. So if you play this on turn 5, say you don't even use the effect to deal damage, they can't just play a Fire Spray because you can just attack it with this, hit yourself for 1, hit the Fire Spray, and then trade into it. So blue-white having an immediate answer into Fire Spray now, I think this card is definitely solid. Moving on though, I got Isla Sakura. This one I'm not quite sure about, honestly. I'd say it's probably like my 10th slot, but I think the actual effect, if you can get the coordinate off, is really solid, right? It's basically just a cheaper Han Solo in a sense. I mean, technically it's better, I guess. You don't have to trade. You could just deal 6 damage to something and take no damage if it has more health. But at the same time, you have to be playing something that can utilize the coordinate, so it's a little more linear than some of these other cards that I think are a bit more versatile. It's still good though, and if you are playing something that can keep units on the board, then this card will generally be online. It's a great ECL target. Sometimes it'll kind of feel bad though, so I'd put that at like my 10 spot if I was like saying what's the best and what's not. Moving on though, we go into red. We got Darth Maul. This card seems insane, right? It's a 5 cost 5/6. It can attack 2 things instead of 1. This deals with swarmy decks, right? Say they play a bunch of 1/1s, you attack 2 of them instead of 1. If they have a couple things, like, I think the coolest interaction, honestly, is just using this as a 1-of swing, right? Because, like, say their board is like a Poe Dameron and something else, like, it's not a good example, right? Because you're not going to clear the Poe. But say it was, you can attack the Poe and the other thing, and normally you would just attack Poe and die, but this you get to possibly, clear something and damage the Poe. Basically things like that, things with more health that you want to make good value trades, this can give it to you. Like, basically, if they have 5 less health in 2 units, or 5 less attack in 2 units, then you can swing in a Darth Maul for super value. Or if they have something with more than 6 attack, then you can just swing into that, and the other one's basically a free hit. I think this card's really good. And then there is the possibility of, with Maul Leader, being able to give it Overwhelm and run over 2 tokens for 8 damage. So, gotta keep that in mind. Moving on though, we got Savage Oppress. This one, it's pretty straightforward, but I think this could be a closing card for some of the yellow villainy, or just kind of a surprise concept. I'm not totally sold on this one either, just because I feel like red. I think I said yellow earlier too, but red villainy doesn't have a ton of aggro right now. I mean, there is Kylo, right? Maybe this makes it into that, but like, other than that, a lot of the red villainy decks currently are control, and I don't think it'll slot into those, but it still might, honestly, just because in control you're not going to have more units than them, generally speaking, so you could just drop a Savage and deal 7, or just run something over. Yeah, I think this card's pretty versatile. I mean, Fire Spray is one of the most broken cards, right? It's definitely up there for sure, and it's just because it comes into play ready. So I think Savage has that possibility as well. Granted, it is more restrictions behind it compared to Fire Spray, but still, I think it's going to be pretty good. Moving on, this one's also kind of a weird one. It is a Rush Clovis for yellow-black. The stat line, I think, is really bad, right? The 3/5. But it has Raid 2 at least to make up for it, so it's still technically attacking. It's a 5/5. But I think the card itself just gives you so much for yellow-black, because it makes the opponent play differently. Like, imagine, like, if you're playing into hard control or something like that, like, sure, they could take down this, but then they'd be missing it for something else or whatever, right? But, like, if not, like, say, if they have a dark side, like, they either have to dark side and take the Clovis, or let you attack with it when they're out of resources, get a token, then their dark side's offline. There's the concept of making them play different. Like, if you play it on 4 resources and they spend 4 or 5, I guess the next turn, right? They spend 5, then you're getting your free token. Maybe they don't care, maybe they do, but it'll make you think, like, do I need to waste all my resources to avoid giving them something else that they could possibly use for exploit, or coordinate or whatever it may be? Or do I play something that costs one less to like float one resource so that when rush attacks they don't get anything? Like, it just kind of makes the game different in a sense. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it gets played around, or if it just gets totally ignored. But I think it'll generally warrant a removal in some style of decks. Moving on though, we got R2D2. I think this card's cracked. It's a 2/4, right? It's already a good stat line for a 2 cost. You get a cycle. I mean, you don't have to also. So, like, say you draw a hand and it, excuse me, say you draw a hand and it's absolutely insane, you can still just play an R2 and not discard anything. But say you draw a hand and you have R2 and you're like, I like 2 of these cards. One of these ones, it's like an 8 drop, you know, I'm not going to use it anytime soon. You can just pitch it, looking for a new option. I mean, this card's too solid in my opinion. I think pretty much every yellow-white list will run it. Yeah, it's a good card. Probably, like, I'm not going to say it for sure, right? But I think so far, at least, it's probably the best one. Just because of how easy it is to put in anything, right? Like, this is a great 2-drop for yellow-white. Moving on, though. You got Emphas Nest. Another yellow-white 7-drop, though. So, yellow already has a ton of bouncing, especially if you go into yellow-white. Like, you could technically also be running waylays and spare the targets if you were, like, really all in on putting stuff back in their hand. This just kind of adds to it, right? Like, the possibility, like, I haven't really, tested it out, obviously, but you could, in theory, play 15 bounces in yellow-white if you were playing mono. You could go waylay, spare the target, cunning, bouncer, and now Emphas Nest. You could literally just keep putting cards back in your opponent's hand. I mean, against low to the ground stuff, it's not going to feel fantastic, right? But against, like, tempo style decks, like, say, Han Yellow, for example, they play a 3-drop, put it back in their hand with a waylay. Go to turn 4, you can cunning, put it back in their hand. You go to turn 5, you can bouncer it back. Turn 6 is kind of a floating area. Then turn 7, you can play an Emphas Nest, put something back in their hand. Then you can attack, put something, like, I'm not sure, like 100%, but I feel like that will kind of be oppressive in a sense. Maybe, like, in hard control, obviously it won't matter as much, and against aggro it'll be okay to keep bouncing stuff, but against other tempo decks, being able to just constantly bounce stuff back to hand is insane. Like, I'm thinking, imagine you're playing like Han 2 blue right now, and they're playing like Obi-Wan, K2, Kanan Jarrus, like all these cards, and you just play this, keep putting them back in their hand. If they play something bigger, you can pump its attack to put it back in hand if you have to. Like, this card scares me a bit. It might not make it as much as I would like, to be honest, just because I think Yellow Heroism has 7-drops already, Han Solo. So it might not be 3-ofs, to be honest, but it will definitely be at least, I think, a 1-of, if not a sideboard. If it were me, I'd probably say at least 2, just because you'd want to see something, but we'll see. Last but not least, we got Now There Are 2 of Them. This one is kind of iffy for me. I still think it's good, but I feel like it's only really good at the beginning of the game, just because, generally speaking, like, your turn 1 you'll play your unit, and then turn 2 you could play this, but later than that it's like not doing you a whole lot, like, unless you're I would assume behind, or like there's just like a laser blast or something, I guess. But having this on turn, like I feel like realistically with this card, what's going to happen is it'll be like, do I have it for turn 1/2? And then if I don't, like if I draw it later, I'll probably resource it. But even with that, being able to play a 5-drop on turn 2 is kind of gross. And there technically will probably be times where like you only have one unit and you get to cheat something out for less. But I feel like I'm not 100% sold on it. I still think it's a good card, but I wouldn't say it is going to be meta defining, I guess. Who knows? Maybe it will. We'll see if there's like a good enough concept. Like I haven't really dove through it enough to think like what would be the best card to bring out with this, right? Like I'll have to look and see what 5 I want to say it'd be a 5. What 5-drop would be the best to play with this? But we'll see if it breaks the game, I guess, but I don't think so, but you never know. So those were my top 10 so far. I'll probably revisit this again once the whole set is released and see what I think has changed. Maybe give a second half top 10 and then round it into one big top 10. Who knows? But yeah, let me know what you think. Drop a thumbs up on the video for me and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.